Hello gamers, welcome to another Honkai Star video. Today I am going to be reacting to Praxis. We need to talk about this as Powercreep video. I've seen some other creators, I've seen that there have been some reactions from other creators by it, and there's also other videos I want to react to put up on the channel, or even make myself, right? And just for like framing for this, I actually do have a recent Powercreep discussion I had on stream that I might put up on the channel. I'll see how I feel about it. But generally, I think power creep isn't as bad as people say, and there's a lot of factors for it. But it definitely exists, right? I want to make that absolutely clear because there's a lot of people that will like hear that first part of what I say and then be completely disingenuous about it and act like that I'm some idiot, or they'll say power creep is like the worst thing ever, and it's realistically like when you look at it meta wise and how the characters actually perform, it's not as bad as what some people claim to say. Like people act like it's making the game unplayable, or that the game is unplayable to do that, and that's like not necessarily true, especially when you look at the performance of a lot of these characters. Right now, granted, I will say one of the biggest things against like most arguments, or I guess arguments for power creep, are going to be like the 1.4, not 1.4, the 3.4 units, as well as the units in this current patch, the 3.3 units, right? With Cypher and Hyacinth, right? With how Hyacinth is kind of like insane for a sustained character, and how despite people aren't recognizing how strong Cypher is basically power creeping Topaz, Joucho, and a bunch of other setups that would like work for sustainless and everything like that. Um, as well as some character buffs, right? So there's a lot going on here, and there's a lot more I could say, but I do actually want to get through this video in particular to see what his thoughts are on it.
I've had a lot of videos that I
So
wanted to
yeah,
bring to my YouTube channel for a long time.
and this I'm already pausing, but yes, there are a lot of videos that I did want to do, but like I'm kind of a perfectionist about things, and so a lot of the stuff like I just haven't uploaded, and so I've got a whole bunch of B-roll, not B-roll, a whole bunch of like videos that are either recorded that I never uploaded, or stuff that I plan on uploading, and or a bunch of videos I just flat out deleted because I just wasn't happy with the result.
That have just been about the general state of Honkai Star Rail. Some related to like the things like global passive, some things related to power creep, some things related to the direction they've taken with some of like the story elements.
Mhm.
But generally speaking, I don't really talk about it very much because I just don't really have a lot of time to make the videos. But today I want to talk about power creep and sort of what's happened with HSR and have kind of an open discussion about that. I'm here on my
I do want to reiterate like my what I'm saying with that, right? Like power creep absolutely exists, 100%. That is very obvious and clear, especially when you look at how units perform, so on and so on, right? All I'm saying is that there's a lot of factors that are into the reason why people feel power creep makes the game unplayable versus how much power creep is actually happening, right? A lot of things, a lot of factors, and some of them even self-inflicted, right, result in people feeling that power creep is worse than it actually may be, right? Um, and that's all I'm really saying, right?
with my Twitch chat, twitch.tv/Brax. And you guys can feel free to say whatever you want in the comments as well. We'll probably be looking over it as well. So why do I want to talk about power creep? Well, throughout Honkai Star Rail's lifespan, there's been a lot of new characters released. Every single patch is like 2 new 5-stars, and sometimes once in a blue moon we get a new 4-star. I think the last 4-star that we got was Moza. Sorry, I think is how you pronounce his name. And that guy was a long ass time ago. And then before him
Yep.
was Gallagher. They've really slowed down the 4-star content, I think. But like
We
looking
need
through all
Mr.
these characters,
Rekka,
I have
bro. Put
every
him as a
single
four
character on
star.
this account because I use it for content. And as you can see, like the amount of 4-stars there are does it pales in comparison to the amount of 5-stars there are, and there's even some 5-stars down here that I just haven't leveled.
Okay, so here's the thing. People always bring up the 4 to 5 star ratio, and we gotta be fucking honest. You're not pulling for 4 stars. Hoyoverse isn't trying to make a bunch of money off of these 4 stars. They're making money off the 5 stars. Especially if you look at every other gotcha model, Hoyoverse has popularized their model, right? But you're like, I don't understand what the point is of talking about the ratio 4 to 5 stars, right? Obviously, it's great if you have very good free to play characters that are accessible for everybody to get, in the form of 4 stars. But at the end of the day, you're pulling for these 5 stars to play with those characters specifically, right? 4 stars, of course, with their rarity, at least in the minds of the people, are gonna come with worse animations, a worse kit, and so on, right? And so you're gonna pull for the 5 star because you want the better kit, the better animations, and so on, right? And so like I don't understand like what the whole point is of bringing up the ratio for the 5 stars when at the end of the day you're not going to be pulling for these 4 stars, and even if you are, you're going to be pulling for a 5 star to replace them at some point, right? And part of that is because of power creep, right? 100%. But why does this matter? Like that's the question I have. Like why does the ratio matter? Because I don't really see why it matters, right?
Right, there's a pretty big difference in the amount of 5 stars and 4 stars in the game, and that's not inherently like a super big issue, but I do think it kind of
He says it himself. But
adds to the power creep problem a little bit because
okay, so I agree, 100% agree. See, awesome, good. It makes power creep feel worse. Fair enough. That's what I was saying. It's like I can see to where if you don't have enough good 4 stars, it's gonna make it feel worse. Um, but another problem with it, and this is another thing that's gonna make it feel worse for some people, and that's what I'm saying, is that some of these characters' kits, like Castorise, for example, don't synergize with these 4 stars. We don't have good 4 star options to synergize with her, right? The best one is Gallagher. Otherwise, the bunch of the 4 star supports, they don't work with her well, because in Ting Yun's case, she doesn't use energy, and Ting Yun builds attack, so you don't even get the HP from it, right? She doesn't want the extra speed from Asta because or the attack from Asta because all the attack, right, is from the memo sprite, right? And so 100%. Like I agree with what he's saying here. Like the lack of certain 4 star options makes it feel worse because players won't have the characters to synergize with their favorite characters, right? And I do want to extend this further because I always say, like, I've been saying this for like literally like 2 years, that a lot of these self-imposed restrictions, whether it be waifu only accounts, male only accounts, so on and so on, or people not actually putting in the work to get their builds done and so on and so on, makes it feel worse because their perception of reality in terms of actual power creep is worsened by the fact that they are, putting those restrictions on themselves, or they don't understand the game enough to see the actual effects of like power creep and stuff like that, right? Again, like I can go on and on about this, right? It's a topic I am very interested in as a game developer, right? Or as somebody who's becoming a game developer, I should say. It's my degree, so yeah, I do agree, right? I don't mean to we're a minute in, bro.
it makes
We're a
people
minute in.
feel as though when a new character is stronger, they have to pull the new character because there's no
This new 5 star doesn't do X thing, and we won't sell cheaper option X thing. Yeah, true. Yeah,
other 4 star that's going to do their job at a little bit worse, which is a thing in a lot of other gacha games that you'll play. There'll be like a 4 star version of a 5 star character.
just packaged differently. Okay, he's right, but also at the same time, people don't understand that Sucrose is like on par with them. It's just Kazuo has a better E skill, um, and a longer duration on his ultimate. That's besides the point. Look, I played Genshin Impact for like four years, right? I quit Fontaine era. I was very in depth in the metagame. Uh, and so I don't think this is the best example, but fair enough. There is variation between these two characters, and it does matter. Same thing with Yelan and Jingqiu, right? But I do understand what he's saying. And I do agree that there's at least with Star Rail, right? For a lot of these limited 5 stars, there is a lack of 4 star teammates that work well with them. For example, Fei Xiao has a good is a good teammate with March 7th and Moe's, right? As to where Acheron, all of her teammates fucking suck, right? Uh, so, yeah, I mean, like Pella's good, and Silver Wolf's getting a buff, so maybe she'll beat the Pella better allegations. But yeah, 100%, I do agree.
Character, and then like that'll be good enough. Whereas like I feel like because they're releasing so many 5 stars, it does kind of add to that. But anyways, the main argument that I have about this is that if you look at like 1.0 units, you have characters like Zila, who is still one of my favorite characters in this entire game, but nobody's gonna argue that hitting 40 to 50k on a skill is like good, right? And then like obviously with the newer
he's
support
not wrong. He's
characters,
not wrong.
the newer ones that you can like giga buff with, Remembrance MC, Robin, Triby, characters like those, right? So like with the newer units that came out, obviously she's going to be stronger, but she's not going to be on the same level as some of the other newer units, like when you look at like
Hmm.
Acheron, for example. And the reason is
Yeah.
just because this character came out sooner, this character came out later, and they gave this character higher stats. Now, why is that a problem? Well,
True.
ultimately, at the end of the day, because there's no PvP in this game, technically power creep doesn't really mean anything. As long as you are able to clear the main content of the game, which
Um, I understand what he's saying, and like this is like, and so like me as a free to play who can clear with a bunch of these old units, like up until recently, I was basically clearing every MOC, still using Jing Liu as one of my teams, right? But the one of the problems she faces is that there was literally no ice weak enemies, and so every time I would go in the MOC, it's just like, oh, can't use Jing Liu because now she's doing like 20% less damage, right? Um, and so there have been issues with her, as well as HP inflation generally, but I've still been able to use Akron. I still do use Akron, and I'm clearing in like sometimes 0 cycles. Are just like a couple cycles totally fine, right? And hell, this current MOC, right? First half, I don't have any imaginary characters. I actually have nothing. I pretty much have nothing for the first half, and you can go watch the video I actually did on it. I just put on my Fugue, and then Harmony MC with Raw May and Gallagher, who wasn't even on a break build, right? He's a dedicated like Acheron support build, so he's super fast and stuff like that. And I was able to clear the first side MOC, right, using basically a full roster of 4 stars and or free characters, with the exception of few who doesn't even have a signature, right? Everybody's using a 4-star weapon. The only thing that's, um, I would say like out of bounds really is the E1 Raw May, which I got whenever she first came out, right? But I'm still free to play who's clearing all this content, right? But I'm not over here saying power creep doesn't matter. I'd say it does to an extent because of HP inflation, right? They are inflating HP, and then they're selling a more powerful character as well as making MOC buffs, right? They're doing shield buffs a lot, um, to make you want to pull this character, right? The newer, the more powerful character, right? But if you're over here and you don't have the pulls, you're some free to play who, let's say, didn't manage, or at least in my opinion, didn't manage their account properly. Uh, you're gonna be like, "Fuck this, bro. This power creep is out of control," right? Because if they can't clear the content, right? Uh, so like I understand like what he's saying here was saying like power creep won't matter if you can still clear, but I still think it does because at some point that person might not be able to clear. Does that make sense? Right? Hopefully, I'm being clear. Um, it's like an agree to disagree. I still think it matters in general in terms of like the game state and how stuff like plays, right? And a lot of things like enemy mechanics factor into this. Uh, but like I get what he's saying.
it's story content, it's simulated universe, and it's endgame content. As long as you're able to clear the main content of the game and there's no PvP, power creep really doesn't mean anything. Because at the end of the day, a character
Also, if they buff characters, it's like who cares?
being stronger than another character doesn't matter if you can still do the job. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. A lot of people will say,
I think that's fair. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, again, like what I was saying beforehand, you could really ignore that because we do agree.
Okay, well, power creep doesn't exist because Zilla can still clear the beetle when the beetle's in MOC.
but there is some nuance to this, and people like to throw that out the window. People like to pretend there's no nuance to anything on the internet, but there actually is nuance to this because you take a look
There
at
is
Zilla,
a lot of
and Zilla,
nuance.
yes, she can clear the beetle, but can she clear all of the content, and can she do it in a respectable amount of time? If you look at how many clears or cycles it would take Zilla
That's
to
true, that's
clear
true.
part of content, it's going to usually be higher, assuming it's not the beetle, than other newer characters that have been released in the game. Like if you look at Zilla versus maybe Castrus or something, just as an example, right? Castrus is another quantum scythe user, right? And all of the new content has been shilling out for Castrus to make her feel better, but she's still a quantum character. So I mean, obviously, if nothing else, you're at least not getting that 20% quantum res. So for the people that can still clear with Zilla, it's not really a huge deal, but it doesn't feel good to go up against like Pollux.
Okay, see, that's exactly what I was saying, right? And he simplified it. Well, maybe simplifying it isn't the right word, but like I kind of misread the quote here, saying technically it doesn't matter. Um, and then like added in like, but it doesn't feel good. 100%. Yeah, yeah. 100. That's all I was really saying.
Try to pull out Zilla because, oh yeah, like, you know, this is a boss made for Castrus, who's a
By the way, I moved my like OBS over here, so I'm like looking over here instead of normally like at the camera, like I would probably do.
quantum character, so surely I should be able to beat it with Zilla, right? Taking Zilla into Pollux doesn't feel very good. And taking Zilla into any content where you can't just one-shot the ads doesn't feel very good. That's actually one of the bigger issues with Zilla that I found that
Zila's kit sucks. It did when it came out, but like we didn't have as much stuff going on, and she could also, because of how low the HP was, just kill everything, right? But it's the same thing with Jing Yuan. Even after Jing Yuan got like 20 different units to buff him, like indirectly or like in some cases directly, he still sucks.
A lot of other people have found is that Zila, the reason she was so strong was one, she obviously like had some of the highest multipliers when she first came out, but
Yes,
also another reason
that's what I'm
is that
saying.
she could one-shot a lot of the ads, and if you
There we
one-shot the
see.
ads,
That's
and you can
literally
get
what
your
I
surges
said.
window, which lets you buff and attack
Yep.
the boss. And something
Hits that revolve around kill mechanics in a lot of so things that revolve around kill mechanics in a lot of games, depending on the game's environment, will either be really good or suck. You look at a shooter, getting a kill for damage boost can be good because a lot of times there's certain, like ad density, right? There's a bunch of enemies. However, in a turn-based game, you're oftentimes not doing a lot of killing. And so kill-based mechanics can just suck, right? There's nuance to this stuff, but like just to give a like a rough example, you're not killing anything in the in modern environment because of HP inflation. So she's not even able to use her kit, um, because it was just, at least in my opinion, a poorly designed kit. I think there should be other ways for her to trigger it, and other ways for her to get out her damage. But we'll see whenever she gets buffed, because 100% she's gonna get buffed.
like that is a really good mechanic for her. But when the ads and when the enemies get HP inflated, when they get more HP to the point where you can't just one-shot everything anymore, then it becomes problematic for her, because then half her
Yep.
kit doesn't work. Which is kind of
Yep.
hot though. That's true. Yeah, thank you, Morgan Topkick.
True.
Yeah, no, you're right. 100%. Basically, all this is to say that, like, when a new character comes out, obviously the company wants to sell a character, and to sell the character, they make it so that that character functions very well in the new content, and it
I'm sure he's gonna explain this, but like right now, the MOC is very shield for Caster Ice. The buff is made for her. Like it's like it's skill damage and Memo Sprite skill. Like it's perfect for her specifically, because there's no other character that does that from it. Well, I guess Ika kind of does that, but you get what I'm saying. Like Caster Ice is the biggest benefactor for the current MOC buff, and the boss is literally like the boss is made to drain and get healed back, so it's like made for her.
it makes it so that some of the older units don't function as well in some of the newer content. Speaking of which, if you want to get any of the new characters, then I recommend checking out today's sponsor.
Topping up is expensive.
Okay, I don't agree with vendors. I do not support vendors flat out. I'm going to skip this ad. Normally, I would let the ad play out, but Braxophone, this is something I do not agree with at all. I don't care if it's like, oh, but it's technically within the TOS or like whatever the fuck. I don't care.
So how do they
Not
shield
sorry.
characters? So Pollux, if you guys don't know, Pollux is a boss where it has like a ton of resistance, basically like
I probably should talk about like if my channel gets big, what I'll do with ads and stuff like that.
90% resistance. So all of the damage that
Outside
you
the
do
scope
to
of
the
this
boss is
video.
reduced by 90% up until you fill up this little
Bro, this mechanic. Okay, he's
circle
talking about
underneath
it.
its HP bar.
This
Once it
mechanic
gets
is
to 100%, Pollux vomits all over
dumb.
you and then starts to take regular damage again. Pollux also drain all of your HP down to 1. So not only does this character work really, really well for casters, but on top of like just the mechanics of the defense being absurdly high, the resistance being absurdly high, and then just disappearing and letting you just wail on it forever. On top of that, you also get your HP drained to 1, which means that Casterus gets a ton of charge towards her dragon again. So this enemy is literally made for Casterus.
Can we have a boss that just inflicts itself with the debuffs every action? I have no agenda.
To look good, and because of that, it makes it feel like, okay, well, if you don't pull Casterus, this is just way more difficult and it's not worth it. But at the end of the day, the other argument still stands that if you can clear this side in 5 cycles, then you can clear this side in 5 cycles. It doesn't really matter. It's
I was able to do it
gonna feel worse
with nothing, and it honestly didn't even feel too bad. It could have been optimized.
but it doesn't really matter. You know, I don't think anyone is going to deny that the damage ceiling of characters has gone up. The amount of damage that characters are seeing,
There's math to prove and disprove certain parts of this. I'm not gonna talk about it because honestly, I already know if I start going like super technical or start saying some shit about certain characters' damage, I'm gonna have people go off of me in the comments and just fucking say some like wild stuff that just isn't even true. Um, he is correct to an extent. But yeah.
normally throughout their functionality is much higher than it used to be. Now, a lot of that is due to new
Hold on, I'm sorry, I missed that.
that the damage ceiling of characters has gone up. The amount of damage that characters are seeing normally throughout their functionality is much higher than it used to be. Now, a lot of
Compared to 1.x characters, yes.
that is due to new supports, but a lot of that is also just multipliers and stats. Like some characters, especially the newer HP scaling ones, I think they're pretty absurdly strong. And then Hyacinth is a good example too. This is we were all shocked when adventuring.
Hyacinth's kit is in some ways to me kind of problematic because I don't think because of her, I don't think we're ever going to get an actual HP buffer for these HP scalers, which in my opinion is kind of unfortunate because I think they could have made a Harmony character that was focused for HP scalers. So that is kind of unfortunate. But then also, she is just pretty much a raw stat character, which, depending on how power creep goes forward, could easily get power corrupt. But legitimately, I do think in a lot of scenarios where Aventurine was the best option, he has, in a way, been power corrupt.
Was coming out swinging with 20k to 50k follow-up attacks on a preservation character. We're like, oh my god, that's like a lot of damage, right? But then you have Hyacinth, who's literally doing Jingliu skill damage every single time she heals. So it's kind
Why do you have to do her like that? I mean, it's true, but
it's kind of ridiculous. And obviously there are team setups that she needs to heal a ton for that to happen, but it still is quite a bit of power locked behind one character that's not even a DPS character. Really puts some older units to shame. So
my biggest problem with her is how much of an impact her E1 makes. Like, why the hell does this unit buff your HP by like 80%? Like, and why is she like Jingli's best teammate? Wink, wink.
Is power creep a problem then? It kind of depends on the lens that you have, because once again, if you can clear out the content, it doesn't matter. But very clearly, there is an increase in the
I don't want to pull her, but I'm gonna have to. Hoyoverse is forcing me at gunpoint.
damage that's going out, and there is an increase. This has actually been confirmed. There is an increase in the HP pools that enemies actually have in MOC, which does.
This is statistically true. You can look up HP inflation on like a variety of websites or a variety of videos. It's 100% true.
In addition to the shilling of specific bosses that work for specific characters, make it so that those characters become more necessary and older characters feel worse. If you are someone that wants to always clear endgame in a ridiculously short amount of time, then honestly, I think that we can say yes, power creep is a problem. But I think that if you're,
you know what? I understand this point of view. Yeah. Especially if you're free to play, if you're like, oh, I want to get the lowest clear possible. Due to HP inflation and character power creep, that's not always gonna happen. There are some characters that can do really well still, that are old, like Akron, for example. Like she can zero cycle the monkey enemy at the bottom, right? She can zero cycle that. But yeah, he's right.
someone that's okay clearing it 5 cycles on both sides, and you don't really feel like you need to have the newest unit every time because you can do it with your older units, then that's great. And then power creep isn't a problem, it's just present. I don't think we should deny that power creep is a thing, but I also don't think that power creep is always a problem to every single person at every.
True. Braxophone is spitting. Thank God there's people finally saying stuff, right? I do think there's a bit more context. Like I said, in my opinion, I don't think it's as bad as people say, but 100% Braxophone is spitting. I'm glad that there's actually people like that I would say are promoting how do I want to word this? At least have the same at least fuck it, whatever. True, just true. Yes, true.
Every single time. Now, something that worries me is seeing Hyacinth come out and seeing how much damage this character does compared to what previous sustainers were able to do. Because that was not a small jump. That was no small jump. That was a pretty big jump in damage. Pretty significant. I've seen some charts going around where people deny that.
People say there's no, that's just not true. Nah, see, this I don't agree with. There is power creep. What? I've never said there isn't power creep, bro. You're never going to hear me say there isn't power creep because I'd be delusional to say that.
Damage has been going up. They say like it's been pretty much in line since Acheron. The problem.
That's not true. No, that's just not true. Like people accuse me of being accurate on shield. That's just not true. What?
Problem is that a lot of those charts that I have seen, I don't actually have them on hand, so I can't put them on screen, but maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. The problem is with all those charts that I've seen, there's been a couple of things. One is that tend to focus on 3 target combat, which would negatively affect their addition characters. And in addition to that, they usually have a set number of cycles. And lastly, they would balance out the cost of teams. Now there's this arbitrary cost system that the community made up to assess like free-to-play friendliness.
True.
I don't really subscribe to it, but I understand.
Thank you. I agree. Brax very based. True.
And functionally how it works. The problem is that some characters can use low investment teams and hit their damage ceiling, and other characters cannot use low investment teams and hit their damage ceiling. And what we should be calculating for is actually clearing content, hitting the damage ceiling, and the right amount of enemies, as opposed to a static amount of enemies and a static type of team.
Thank you, Brax. Holy dude, Brax is bait. This is why if I did okay, I'm not gonna lie, I might have to do a gotcha content creator tier list. Brax is gonna be one of the only like triple S tier ones.
It really does feel like in that way, when you calculate it that way, it feels almost like math is being used dishonestly to prove an agenda or prove a point. And that is a big problem we have in the Star Rail community already. Yo.
He is 100% correct. And this is why I always advocate for understanding the game better and not pushing this agenda garbage. All right. This is what I'm always talking about, especially on stream. It's like, I will always promote understanding the game more, right? And understanding how things function. Like, thank you.
Post editing Brax here. I want to give credit to Sarah of the Abyss, or at Sarah Elise back on Twitter. They're often around the Honkai Star Rail community doing math and helping people out with that kind of stuff. But that's where I initially saw this chart that I took some issues with. This is no shade to them. I just kind of feel like it's not exactly the most accurate representation.
Not wrong assuming their best success team was sustained balance around Aglaya's team. Honestly, it's not about investing in your main team and picking up half bad pieces. It's honestly about not investing in your main team and picking up half pieces of other teams where you start to feel it. Is this true? Acheron no jail chow 50% increase. No, I don't know if this is true. However, as somebody who has used all these units, I don't immediately think this is wrong. I think. Okay, well, I'm gonna disagree with Rappa because Rappa's bad, but besides the point. This is fair enough, yeah.
Of how character scaling has been since those characters came out, especially when you consider things like front-loaded characters, back-loaded characters, the amount of cycles we're calculating for, the amount of targets. I don't really feel like there's a perfect way to calculate it, but I don't feel like this is entirely honest, at least looking at the entire game as a whole. And I can't wait for
I agree with Brax, and this is why I always talk about understanding the game more, and why people need to understand the game and stop. This is an actual quote. I talked about this before in another video, but people need to understand the game more and stop fear-mongering around power creep, fundamentally. I think it's ridiculous that there are people that will go and complain about power creep, but then don't actually understand how the game works. That's really about it. You should have a informed perspective on stuff.
For this to turn into a massive drama unnecessarily and be slandered.
There isn't drama unless you're stupid.
In 70 different communities for saying this. So either way, if you take a chart and you have a certain amount of enemies and a certain amount of cycles, and you say every single character is going to fit confined to this, it's going to make every single character's power level look different. And it's not an ideal way to contest that power creep is a thing. You can see very obviously with the amount of damage that's going out with every single character.
Yeah, I don't know who's denying its existence. Because like what?
That power creep is definitely a thing. It definitely exists. Now, whether or not it's a problem is completely up to you guys, because that depends on your playstyle. It depends on what.
It's a problem to an extent, but as I said, there's nuance to the scenario, and I think a lot of people, partly because of self-implied restrictions, it makes it feel worse for them in particular than power creep may actually be in reality.
What you like to do, it depends on how many of these older units are appealing to you and how many of them you've really maxed out and invested in. But I do think that one thing that we can all agree on that is a big problem and definitely contributes.
Bro, do I have streamer mode turned off? Like what?
To the power creep
Sorry about the
argument
Discord
is the
thing.
fact that there are not enough 4-stars coming out, and
They give access to feature. Yes.
It really does make it feel like you have to pull the new 5-star, because all of these new 4-stars that have come out in the past.
Yes. Yes. No. Please release Mr. Rekka as a 4-star healer so I don't have to pull the fatty fat for Jingli Yu.
Like Moe's felt like really
Please
good
do
for
something.
follow-up teams when that was relevant. Gallagher has been the GOAT, but like we've just been missing that sort of like,
Gallagher
oh,
is
this
goated.
4-star feels really good in this team, so I don't have to worry about pulling this.
So the funny thing about this, I said it earlier, Topaz is getting power crept, just like pretty much directly. Despite the fact that she's still going to generate more stacks for Fei Xiao than Cypher. Cypher's kit is like kind of insane and invalidates a bunch of characters in their flex roles now. Because their flex roles are just going to be replaced by Cypher. But yeah.
Character, and I think that does create a new level of FOMO that's almost more threatening than just making the 5-stars do a lot of damage. So I don't know, I would like to see more 4-stars in the game personally.
I agree.
And yeah, like would it be nice if the new characters were doing less damage? Yes, but also at the same time you got to understand that a lot of people complained in Genshin that like 4-stars were the best in the game, and that they felt like every new 5-star just gets outclassed by like Xiangling.
Oh, wait, I need to let him finish the quote.
So like, why would you even get the new 5-star? And I think people are going to complain either way. There's going to be people that complain if there's power creep. There's going to be people that complain if there isn't power creep. There's going to be people that are going to be upset that their characters are always doing the same amount of damage and they're always beating the end game. And there's going to be people that are complaining that their old characters can't complete the new end game. Either way, people are going to be upset about it. I don't know. They're sort
He's completely right. Yeah, he's completely right. As for the Genshin, there's no point talking about Genshin actually.
of in this unwinnable situation. I think the only way Hoyoverse can really address the power creep issue,
right.
Obviously they can dial back the damage every character does, but then people are going to be like, well, this character isn't worth it, so skip this character because they don't do as much.
I mean, I said that for Caster Ice, and actually multiple people mentioned it that she's not directly better than the other 3.0 characters. But the community will always push their agenda, so
Much damage, or they do just as much damage as the other characters, so there's no point. It is an unwinnable situation. I think the only thing they can do is introduce some more 4-stars to make it feel less like you have to pull every new 5-star that comes out.
Yes.
And that maybe, you know, you can get a 4-star that does a decent enough job at whatever you want them to do for your.
Dude, remember back when Shuehi came out, she was like actually a good DPS? Man.
Old 5-stars to feel better. That, and the other thing they're doing that's a really good thing is buffing old units, and I think they should do that. I think Jinglu is much in need of a buff, and they're doing a great job by doing
Jiao Cho needs a buff.
that. Silverwolf as well. Silverwolf needs to be AoE.
I'm not joking about that, by the way.
There's no reason Silverwolf is not AoE at this point. Back when we started, it was fine for Silverwolf to be single target, but Silverwolf's defense shred is pretty close to Pele's. Obviously, Silverwolf has res shred as well, and she also has like the other bugs and does a fair bit of damage. But the thing is that like Silverwolf being single target and taking a skill to implant that weakness is just like not worth it. So it's really good that Silverwolf is getting some buffs. I would like to see some buffs for other characters that have been power crept. I think Sparkle could use a little bit of buff.
Knowers.
I think Fushuan, they can.
Oh, Fushuan needs a buff, bro. She was mid as hell whenever she came out. I'm gonna tell you the truth.
I think they could be a little bit more generous with their HP, especially considering all the HP scalers.
Make Fushuan give HP buffs similar to. Honestly, the HP buff wouldn't even fix Fushuan's like issues. Her being preservation immediately makes her worse for some of these HP scalers like Blade and My Day. Just because of like aggro percentages and stuff like that. So there's the bigger problem there, but that would be funny if they gave her more HP buffing.
That we have now. It's good to see that Blade's getting buffed. Like, there's a lot of characters that can really use it. So as long as they continue
Should I pull up the chart?
to do that, I think the player base will be satisfied. I'll personally be satisfied if they buff old units, as long as, you know, that is something that is on their plate. So TLDR, I guess, is power creep an issue? That's dependent on how you play the game. But is power creep present? Absolutely. Are they trying to do something about it? Yes. I think buffing old units is great. I wish they would add more 4-stars. I think that would help a lot. They could buff units like FGO does. It's exciting to see what they buff for players. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that the way FGO does buffs is really good. I would love if they introduced a character story and then at the end of the character story, they got stronger.
Wait, no, okay. I actually do. No. I don't know what he's talking about specifically, but I do actually agree. So if anybody has played Dokkan Battle has this whole Easy A awakening system, which you do a special stage designed around like the character's category or whatever, to get tokens to then upgrade the character, right? And so I think that's what they should have done for the buffing. I'm pretty sure they are doing a completely different way, right? They're just doing the direct buffs to the character's kit, like with a toggle, like we've seen in Zinless. But like I would have loved to have a new mode to actually like for players to go and grind up to unlock the character upgrade materials, and then it unlocks the toggle for the upgrade switch, right? I think that would have been really cool, but they're just doing it I would say lazy way. There's cool ways to implement new upgrade systems. And here's the thing, awakening systems like this, they don't have to actually increase character levels. They can just completely rework the passive, right? They don't have to, oh, +1 passive or anything like that. Like, no, there's other ways to do it. And that would have been nice. But I will say a direct buff like this just means they could do another one later. I mean, sure. Dokkan, for example, did do super easy A, so it's like on top, on top. But like, yeah, either way, like, I think there's more interesting ways to do it. So yeah, I agree. Let me unpause.
I really think that could be super sick. I want to say for the record, guys, I don't think adding more 4-stars solves the problem, but I think that part of the reason things feel so bad is because we don't have a lot more 4-stars.
True.
That's honestly, I really think that's like one of the biggest things, and why people feel so bad about it is that, like, if every new character that comes out is like insane and there's no new 4-stars, then your only options to pull for are the next insane character, and then, oh, the next character does more damage, or you need the next character to make the next character do more damage. Like, can we make one of those needs like a 4-star character? You know, like, that would be helpful. Obviously, they're not gonna make a 4-star DPS better than 5-star DPS, but like, can we make like a healer that does damage like Hyacinth, maybe does less damage, that gives you like a ton of HP? Like, we could use links with Castris, I guess, but like, it's not the same, guys. It's not. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you think power creep is an issue or if it's just present, what you guys think about it, and if you have any solutions for what they could do. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one, which should be like Cypher stuff, so I'm excited.
Oh yes, please Cypher stuff. I love Cypher. Anyways, yeah, Brax true based in real. Honestly, love to see it. I think Brax is like does a great job with a lot of this stuff, right? Huge fan of the guy. Even though I don't really watch other content creators, I think Brax does like a great job. He's definitely like the like probably arguably. No, honestly, I think he's probably just the best gacha creator. Even with like a limited content, still like it's his stuff is enjoyable, right? And he keeps it contained, and simple, right, for the audience. And I can appreciate the way he does stuff. I do really like it. But speaking of the chart, these are the characters I think need a buff. These are characters I think that would be nice to have a buff. These are the characters I don't think you should touch. Argue about this in the comments if you really want to. I'm correct. All of you are wrong. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitch, and I'll see you on the next one.